Hi, everybody. Sorry if there's some buzzing sound in the background. It's these headphones. Oh my God. So, who has seen the first two webinars so far with Mario and James? Because I'm like obsessed, literally obsessed with them. So, I was supposed to stay on a little longer with all of you to talk about James afterwards, but I was so obsessed that I just hung up and I was like Googling him, like, how do I become his best friend for real? Um, so, I got a little ahead of myself. But after this, we will stay on for a little bit, and then we will chat. Oh wow, that's so inspiring. Just I love doing these webinars. It's so awesome just to hear these people that are in the trenches, making things happen. And yeah, I just love it. So there's two, Tanya, yeah, Tanya notice says that I have changed shirts, and yes, I'm still trying to find the perfect shirt color for my complexion. The other color was not doing it. So yeah. So let me just do this. Okay. So green. Yes, I do have a green. Maybe next time it's green. But I'm so excited for this webinar as well. There is a few more webinars coming. We have one Monday with anonymous content. We have another one later next week with Kaylee Marsh, who's manager of Brillstein, who created the Blood List. And then the week after, we have the writer of The Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons and Little Women. And then I think on the 24th, we have the creator of Criminal Minds and Teen Wolf. And there might be a surprise or two as well. Okay, cool. So there's a chat box and there's a Q&A box. In the Q&A box, there is, I'm getting all these amazing suggestions for what kind of shirts I should wear, which means this one is not doing it, I guess. You like all the other colors. Yeah, so there's a chat box where some people are typing, and there's a Q&A box. Leave the Q&A box for questions that will come in about, this will go for an hour long. The first 30 minutes is going to be asking questions to the execs, pre-screen questions, though I will say I've not asked a single one of those questions yet. In any of the webinars, I go off on tangents, I get very excited. And then after that, when I'll give you all like a few minutes notice when it's time for you all to start typing in questions. Don't do it yet, but do it in a little bit. So we have Katie Mullens from Netflix, who's fantastic, and she did a webinar with us, a panel with us, maybe a month ago about it was like a award season themed webinar series that we have. And I mean, needless to say, Netflix has taken over the world. I can't even say it's taking over the world because it's past that. It has taken over the world. And it's especially at these times where everybody's just inside. I really feel, and who cares what I say, I'm very curious to hear what Katie has to say about the movement of everything going to the streamers, and just that's just going to catapult that industry even more, which I'm excited about because I feel like it really is opening up a lot of amazing opportunities for writers and different voices to come out, which is really awesome. So enough what I have to say. Let's do this. And at the end, let's stay on after the hour, and then we'll talk with another fun thing. So let me bring Katie into it. Okay. Again, sorry about the buzzing. I'll ask you to start your video. There we go. Hi.
Hi, Joey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you.
Good to see you again. Where in LA where do you reside?
I'm in Silver Lake.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Netflix is also kind of by Silver Lake, right?
It's like East Hollywood, so it's pretty, yeah.
How are you dealing with the quarantine? Is it busier for you than ever?
You know what? It has been obviously just like as a human, very bizarre. And then work-wise, it's like incredibly busy because animation has really been able to just not skip a beat and keep moving. And if anything, I think we're busier. So
Yeah.
it's probably good for me just to stay so busy and to be so engaged. But it's been stressful and exciting.
I feel like, and you know better than anybody, that animation, that's going to be it for a bit. Like that's going to take over even more.
It definitely seems like folks are leaning into that. I had heard last week that even some live action shows are shooting animated episodes to continue the storyline for their seasons, which I think is really interesting. But certainly it is sort of like all eyes in the industry are on animation right now. in a way that I think is super exciting.
I think it's super exciting. Yeah. The only series that I do not want it to happen on is Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. If it happens for that series, I am out. Anything else is fine, but that can't go that way. Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining. So exciting to chat with you guys. Joey knows this, but I've been at Netflix for almost 5 years now. I originally started in sort of primetime live action series, doing a lot of licensing and co-productions, and then I moved over to work, help start our feature animation team about 2.5 years ago. Before I was at Netflix, I was at the Jim Henson Company. So for me, it was a super seamless transition into going back to family content.
I'd love that you, like somebody was like, can you start this division with me at Netflix? That must have been like, yeah, of course, I'm dropping everything I'm doing. What was that like?
Well, it was so interesting because when I went to Netflix in 2015, it was a startup. It was truly like we had a few original series. That was kind of it. We were not a studio. We were still very much like a tech company trying to get into entertainment.
Wow.
And so for me, thinking about being able to then sort of be on a ground floor of something just like that was so exciting. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to like animation. I'm a series person. I'm moving into film. Like there were all these open questions, but the notion of being able to sort of build something was so exciting to me that I just honestly, I think I didn't think about it enough.
Yeah.
But it wound up being, the right choice.
What do you feel really pushed Netflix over the edge to being such a dominating force in the industry? Like you said, you started as a startup. When did you see the tide turn? And you're like, wow, this is different than I thought.
I mean, I would have to give most, if not all, of the credit to the creative leadership of the company, particularly folks like Ted Sarandos, who just saw the writing on the wall and the way that the industry would change, moving away from cable packages and theatrical models and into streaming, and knowing that the studios would eventually wise up and not want to sell us their content anymore. And so all the way back in 2013, 2014, he was buying and producing original content, which was not something that made any sense for what was a DVD delivery company. So in terms of actually really seeing the tide start to turn, I think it was probably right about the time I joined the company, obviously very lucky to have done so. But as soon as we started to get into original content, it felt like that's where people really began developing a personal love and connection with the brand. It was great before, but then once you had Orange is the New Black, and things of that caliber, House of Cards, which obviously then became complicated, but, it really was more of a one-to-one personal relationship with the great storytelling coming out of the company. And from there, I just feel like it's been a rocket ship.
Was Orange is the New Black, was that the first big series that Netflix did? I'm trying to remember.
House of Cards was the first big one, and then Orange was right after that.
How many series or features, this is probably so hard to say, do you guys have going on at the same time? Thousands, I can't even imagine, hundreds.
Thousands, yeah, because it's not just, obviously we're so Hollywood focused,
Yeah.
but there's also teams programming, Bollywood musicals and Korean dramas and anime and, German, crime thrillers. So it's not just what we're doing here in LA, it's all over the world. So I wouldn't even be able to tell you how many things we have going on.
Wow. Now you're saying that, I'm thinking back at of the studios, and it always seems like they always just have one kind of umbrella and everything falls underneath that. But what you all are doing, which is really interesting, it's like you do the animation and then you do the Bollywood musicals and you do this. It's like everybody's doing being the master of one division, which is why I think you guys are one of the reasons why you're all so successful, that it's just everything's so focused, which is really exciting.
Totally. It's like leaning on people who are real experts in that capacity. And then also I think it's really believing in that it's not just Hollywood content that has the power. I think it's very traditional studio thinking to say like, well, whatever we export from LA, people will watch. But it's been so cool. And that's another great thing in my time at the company. We really lean into that international production. But like, I don't know if you watch Casa de Papel, but like, that's a giant show for us.
Yeah.
Produced in Spain, Spanish language, and folks watch it all over the world, subtitled or dubbed. And we have this very firm belief that great stories can come from anywhere and be for everywhere. So I think that's also what makes us really uniquely positioned to succeed, because we get the opportunities to tell stories from all over the world, from all different kinds of people.
That's so awesome. I love that, because you really are then satisfying every demographic. Great.
Exactly.
Some
Yeah,
demographics that don't get that kind of attention.
that's
So
right.
you're focused in the feature animation, and
Exactly.
so what do you look for in an animation feature?
So I think what we really look for across the board in feature animation is, well, it's a few things. I mean, it's really reductive to just say like great story, but I do think in animation, you know, you are sort of pushed to have a clarity of world building that doesn't necessarily exist in live action in the same way, right? Because if in animation there are no rules, so you have to establish them. So what we really look for is somebody who has, you know, strong an idea or and a writer behind it that has a strong storytelling sensibility. And then also I think so much about great historical animation is higher concept ideas.
Mm.
So thinking about things like Toy Story is like what happens to my toys when I leave the room, or Monsters Inc. is like where do nightmares come from? You know, I think that is also something that we tend to look for, is like, what is that thing that feels super universal that we can tap into? And then the other thing with animation, which I think is really unique, is that it really does rest a lot on sort of like the heart and soul.
Mm.
So something like Coco, let's say, that's such a personal story, that's such an intimate family story. And we find that those, you know, really heart forward, I'll describe like heart forward stories resonate with folks in animation, probably more than anything else.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking back at, like, I know last time we did this, I talked about the Disney classics like Beauty and the Beast and
Mhm.
Aladdin. It all comes from like core, like the universal themes that's so relatable, which is so exciting. So you also have the power to get things over the finish line.
Yes.
So how is that? Like, how do you find, like, what is the process of you finding a project and
Mm.
taking it to greenlight? Like,
Mm.
what do you need to, like, that project to have or that person to have to make you carry it along?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like I said, in terms of actually at the earliest stage of buying things, it's going to be about passion for the material, clarity of vision, all of that stuff that is sort of typical. And then with animation, in terms of getting to green light, I think, you know, for us, it's actually quite simple, probably simpler than most other studios, but different in the sense that a lot of animation studios will work off a treatment. And sort of the writers in those scenarios take a little bit more of a backseat to the artistry. And we're much more script driven, actually. So, you know, for us, the very, very first step is getting an amazing draft. That's absolutely thing number one. We will not move forward without it, which actually allows us to have a lot more production efficiencies down the line, which seems like the most obvious thing to say, but not every studio does. And then it's about you know, bringing on a pretty lean artistic team that will develop the look of the picture. So meaning like, what do the main characters look like? What do the main environments look like? And then we storyboard out a few scenes to say like, what's the tone? Like, what's the pace of this thing? Is it snappy? Is it more sentimental? What are the range of the storytelling? And that's really like the package, quote unquote, that we work on to get to green light. And that can take, sometimes it takes 3 months, you know, it can be super fast, and sometimes it takes a year and a half. It just sort of depends on the speed of the team.
Does it, the speed of the team, does it depend also on the content, or is it just strictly the speed of the team?
You know, we have an appetite to produce so many films that it's really just like whenever we're ready, you know, it's like, okay, great. If you feel like you need 6 months to get there, we'll give you 6 months. If you need more or less, that's totally cool. So we can be super flexible.
And how much is the writer on board to, like, because there's so many moving parts with animation. So like, how much do you have to, like, get to know the writer before you take on this huge project where their input is so integral to moving things along?
Mm. I can be pretty fast just on a personal level. Like I think, and you'll know this too, but we meet with so many people that you just sort of know right away if it's going to work.
Yeah.
Um, but it does take, I do find that we spend a lot more time with both our writers and our filmmakers, at least than I did in my live action life, exactly to your point, because it's like, this is going to be potentially a 5-year journey we're going to be on together. This is not an in and out stint.
Yeah.
Um, that's a long way of saying it takes a little bit more time in the development process, you know, to foster the vision and hone the vision and foster the relationship. But in terms of being ready to commit to somebody, I can do it even in the room. So
I love, I'm from New York, fast. Fast,
Yeah,
fast, fast. I love that. Where are you from again?
I'm from New York
Oh, you
originally.
are? Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Um,
exactly.
what is, so connecting on a human level is so important. So when in the pitch stage, what do you look for in a writer on a human level when they're pitching to you?
Hmm. I would say for me, number one is somebody who has a perspective, but also knows how to pick their battles. So, like, somebody who, my biggest pet peeve is somebody who comes in and goes, like, I don't know, what do you want it to be? Like, it could be anything. It could be a series, it could be a film. And I'm like, just tell me what you want. It's okay. It's not, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
So I think that's to me the sort of barometer number one is like, are you somebody who has a very strong perspective and will bring that? And for example, like knows what kind of music their main character would be into, right? And then the second thing is knowing how to decipher what is a good note and a bad note, and that goes to the like picking your battle sort of thing. Like, I think some people can be way too opinionated and sort of dig in their heels, and it harms their story ultimately because they're not open to any feedback. And then on the other extreme, I've worked with some folks who are very amenable and sort of won't stick up for anything, and those people sort of get stuck in the mud.
Mhm.
So what I'm really looking for is somebody who has an opinion but has the soft skills and sort of like the interpersonal skills to make those judgment calls about how to best foster their story.
And it's hard. I remember saying that last time too, is that you are like, even if you have an opinion about something, you are very open to communication
That's right.
with the creator. I feel like it's hard for writers sometimes, especially with something as huge as Netflix. It's just
Mm.
like they just feel like any wrong word or
Mm.
kind of be combative a little bit is like then the Netflix doors closed. But I mean, they do have to stand by their guns a little bit and stand up for what their creative idea is.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, Netflix generally, we are very creator driven. So
Mhm.
I think I can only speak for myself and my team, but I do know that other teams certainly look for the same thing, which is like, this is your vision. We don't have a studio brand in the same way that others do, like DreamWorks, let's say, for example, or Illumination. They have a very strong brand. We don't have that. So it's really ultimately going to be your story and your film. And so demonstrating that really clearly up front that I will be able to see this thing through because I have such clarity for it is super key.
Cool. I love that. I hear a lot of times writers, when they're pitching, they ask about supplementary material, whether
Mm.
it's a pitch deck or a lookbook, even just at the initial pitch session, or they have like some kind of slideshow where somebody's coming in to pitch to you. Do you want any of that? Is it just the verbal interaction? Do you like when people have like kind of layout slides?
I'm really open. I think, there's all different kinds of people. I think actually with writers in particular, some are great pitchers and some are not. And by the way, you don't have to be a great pitcher to be a great writer. Everybody knows that, but it's worth saying it out loud because I think, it's so easy to put so much pressure on yourself of having like a razzle dazzle in the room. So I really encourage people like, what's going to make you feel the most comfortable? Sometimes it is hiding a little bit behind like presentation. Like, please look over at the screen. Don't look at me. I'll walk you through it. But like, that if that enables you to walk us through it in the best way that you can, I totally encourage that. But it's not a prerequisite of any kind to have a presentation or to nod. It's really just whatever works best for you.
And what advice would you give a writer going into a pitch? Maybe with no supplementary material, it's just a pitch. How do you like to be pitched?
I would say there's so many different elements to it. Well, I would say to me it's really important to be off book. So know your story, know what you're talking about, sort of know that inside and out. Come prepared, of course, right? Like to my earlier point about like it's a question I ask a lot, which is um uh what kind of music would your main character listen to, because it tells right away whether or not you know your main character or not. And
I
then
love that.
uh, and then I would say, important to just keep it to the very relevant pieces of information, right? So like, I want to know about the arc of the main character. I want to know about the main plot. I want to know about the antagonist. If there are supplementary characters that really feed into our protagonist's arc, that's important too, but not to get bogged down in telling me every single detail. It is a test of, well, it's not a test of how well you are as an actor. It is a test of how well you can tell a story.
Yeah.
If be a storyteller, you should have somebody in the room feel very engaged by what you're saying. So focus on the key stuff would be my biggest piece of advice.
And if a writer comes in and they are sweating, they're nervous, it is
Sure.
not their day. It's just whatever. Or
Yeah.
just they're just introverted and going into Netflix is the scariest thing in the world to them.
Yep.
Are you okay with this for you personally with like
Mhm.
teams coming in and maybe the writer kind of being there and somebody else pitching for them? Do you like hearing it directly from the writer?
Happy to have somebody else pitch on behalf of the writer for
Mm.
sure. Definitely if there's a filmmaker involved, that tends to happen where the filmmaker will pitch the story. I think it's probably just the nature of being a director versus being a writer.
Yeah.
But a producer too, yeah, is the short answer. Totally okay.
You must have been in so many amazing pitches and
Yeah.
just the different kind of filmmakers coming in and the types of filmmakers. It must be so awesome. Can you, this is just a random question I have.
Yeah.
Can you tell when somebody comes in before they even start pitching and you're like, this person's going to be good? Just even
No,
you can't tell.
no.
Yeah.
Sometimes people really surprise me. I would actually say the opposite, which is I know if it's really not going to go well, like immediately. And it's not because somebody's nervous. It's usually just, and this is actually just a general piece of advice for folks. Oftentimes it'll be like, how did they speak to my assistant? Like, how did they introduce themselves to everybody or just to me because they think I'm the most important executive? And there are little things like that. Again, because this is like a 5-year relationship we're going to have. I want to know that you're also a human. So those sorts of things right away turn me off. But I'm so surprised sometimes where I'll walk in a room, they're clearly very nervous. They won't look at me. It feels awkward. The tech's not working, whatever. And then they totally blow you away. So that's a long way of saying not really.
But what you said, this is something we're telling our writers more and more, is like how you email us is how we are going to assume you will communicate with the Katies of the world or the other executives. It's like, it's all about giving the best impressions to everybody because people are going to be, you're going to be talking to your assistants and, it's like they are going to be like, oh, this person was a dick or whatever. I don't know. But it is, that's very important. With
And I'll
somebody's,
just share anecdotally, because I think it's relevant in this conversation, which is, I'm a young woman and I could not even begin to tell you how many times I've been mistaken for an assistant in the room. And that's okay. But the way that, exactly to your point, you just never know who you're talking to, and you just have to be a decent person
yeah.
to everybody in the room because it can make or break your opportunity.
Oh, I love that. Everybody listen to that. That's so important. What is, where was I over there? Okay. For leave behinds, do you like when somebody leaves something behind, a pitch deck, lookbook?
I personally do, yes. I know that it's people don't love to do it, but for me, as we talked about before, it's just so helpful for us to be able to go back and talk to our teams if we have something on hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I do prefer it. I know others don't really feel strongly either way, but for me, it's helpful.
And for you hearing a pitch, how long do you like a pitch to be?
I think a good pitch is somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes.
Okay. Cool. That's long. That feels so long.
I know it seems long. I guess if anything, I was like maybe leaning more towards 20, but really like I've sat in pitches that are like 60 minutes and it's torture. So
Yeah.
for me, half an hour or less is the sweet spot.
Wow. And is it all about like, do you all story? Do you like when they come in and talk about themselves when their pitch starts or why they think it's relevant or stuff like that? Or is it just jump right into the story?
I love that question because it's actually the thing that I tell people, actually particularly filmmakers, but writers as well, who are coming into pitch. I say that and again, this is just for us, but I do think it's true with everyone. The thing that I should feel at the very end and that you should always start with is like, what is your personal connection? So yes, maybe it's like, here's where I come from, here's why I want to tell the story, here's why it's so important to me. Again, in animation, it's such a big commitment, it's such a time consuming thing, and also these stories are so generation defining that personal connection is going to be the thing that like, we know will allow the story to really shine. So totally is the answer. I think absolutely I give that advice to everybody is start and end with why you, why now, why this, like what is the heartbeat of it? Because the story and the plot can change, but like if we leave the room and we feel like, holy shit, that person has so much passion for the story and we know they will bring so much truth to it, like that's That's the answer.
Oh, I love that. And everybody can start typing. You can start typing in your questions now. And I will tell you now, I will not be able to get through all of them. So please do not write me mean emails. I'll try to do my best. But there's only so much time. So what are some typical questions you'll ask somebody at the end of the pitch, besides, what music did your protagonist get into, or getting to know the
Yeah.
protagonist more? What are some other like common questions you ask a writer at the end?
Mhm. It sort of just depends on the pitch, like and what I feel like I might not have gotten enough of.
Hmm.
But sometimes I'll also push on things that maybe I don't agree with. So let's say this is a real example of something I bought recently that doesn't have a traditional antagonist. So it's sort of like more of like an antagonist of environment kind of.
Hmm.
And so I asked about that and pushed on that. But yeah, I mean, to my earlier point, it's almost always about like the main character, the clarity of their arc, the intimacy and complexity of who they are, the world building elements. Sometimes I'll ask a writer in animation how they see it executed, though it's not the writer's responsibility by any means to have, a vision for how we're going to produce a film. But it does help to know, like, do you see this super stylized? Something like, Willoughby's, which just came out recently, is super, super stylized and goofy, and that actually allows us to tell a dark story. Or do you see it super photo real? Like, we'll ask questions like that.
Cool. This might be a weird question,
Yeah.
but I'm curious. So I always tell the writers when I'm teaching them how to pitch is a lot of times an executive will ask at the end when they're done talking and asking questions is they'll ask, do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
And I feel like 9 times out of 10 a writer is just so adrenaline rush. They're like, nope, I want to get out of here. I just want to get out of here.
Right. Yeah.
But like for you, like when you ask that question, what is a question, maybe you could think back at a pitch you had where you asked, you have any questions for me? And somebody asked you a question and you're like, that is such a good question. And it kept the conversation going.
I think the one time that is really coming to mind for me was somebody asked me if I like felt the reality of their character. And it was a more junior writer who sort of was like, oh, look, I'm going for this thing. It's super. And the answer was yes, but to your point, it did continue the conversation about that character and that story. And we wound up buying the pitch. So, but I don't know if we would have bought it without that question. So
Yeah.
that was probably the one that was like, what it demonstrated to me was this person who right away was going to be open and collaborative to feedback, and was just like genuinely wanting to know if I felt like they were on the right track. So I thought that was good.
I love that because it is true. It's like it shows the openness from the writer. It shows that they care about your input and they want to potentially make their pitch stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
So it's great. Oh, the Q&A box is going crazy. Okay, sorry, buddy. Let me jump right into some questions. Okay, so this is from Sarita. How does an animation script look different than a live feature script?
That's a good question and one we get a lot. And I will say, frankly, it doesn't really. I think a lot of writers feel like they have to do more explaining about the world or, the mechanics. I'll say very, very small things like, let's say you were writing Zootopia. You would probably want to indicate that this is it, all animal world where they all have agency and we're moving around and they're anthropomorphized. It's little things like that, but otherwise it looks and reads exactly like a live action script.
Cool. Maggie says, do you normally need a budget in the pitch?
No, I don't think so. I think good to sort of have a sense of, we'll want to be aligned on like, is this a tiny movie or is this a giant movie? But you don't need to come in and say like, Katie, I believe this is a $70 million film. Here's why. Like, no, but it does help. And to my earlier point about, having a perspective of how you see it, again, just leads to like clarity of vision. So if you're like, no, I'm realistic, I think this is a smaller film, great. But you don't have to have any specifics.
Cool. This is from Jeremy. As a medium with many of its own unique technical aspects and challenges, how does the track record or experience of the person pitching factor into the evaluation of the pitch?
Yeah, it's a good question. Totally valid. I think we at Netflix and myself personally, I probably work with more first timers than seasoned folks. I think that's partially because a lot of the talent in animation is sort of the same folks who have been recycled over and over again. And so ultimately for us, it's going to be more about concept and about scope of the concept and the story more so than the talent attached to it. Now, of course, if you are, I think this is particularly true in comedy. Like if you're an amazing comedy writer with a huge background in that capacity, it will probably increase our willingness to spend a little bit more on that because we know you have a proven track record. But typically, it's going to be more about the actual story and the concept.
And in your division solely, do you care if somebody comes in with just a naked script? Do you want, because like is always like these things that people say Netflix just wants packages, but like for you, it seems like they could just have the script.
Yes, we definitely are unique in feature animation in that we don't need packages. We oftentimes buy just pitches, not even drafts. We'll buy just a pitch from a writer, and we'll work with them. Particularly again, if we feel like the concept is super unique and not like anything else we've ever heard before. So for us, no package needed.
Oh my God, I love that. This is from Paul. What is currently your favorite animation show on Netflix? Oh, can you even say? I don't even know, but what is it? What would be yours? Maybe even just like personally, like, oh, I'm so happy that got on.
Totally. I have to just be honest and say that Big Mouth is like one of my favorite things ever written. So
Yeah.
I've been rewatching it now that we're in quarantine. So I gotta go with Big Mouth.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm so curious, like with everything, do you genuinely feel like there is going to be such I'm going to say resurgence because it's been popular, but such a kind of a crescendo of animated features and series?
I think that perhaps it would have, the COVID could have impacted that, but we're actually in like such an animation heyday right now. Anyway, the past couple of years, I think particularly with Netflix coming into the marketplace, there are more animated series and films being produced right now, I think, than in the history of animation. So
Oh, wow.
It's very much sort of like a gilded age in that capacity. So I think it's just already ripe, and you'll see sort of the fruits of that coming in the next few years.
This is from Ariel. Hi, Katie. Thanks for sharing your insight. What was your experience like transitioning from the traditional Hollywood entertainment company, like the Jim Henson Company, to a tech company that has decided to be in the entertainment industry? What has been your learning curve with that? Now, all keeping in mind like the tech side of things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, the most stark difference is that most traditional companies rely a lot on intuition. And that's good. And obviously, I'm a creative executive, so I believe deeply in that. But there is so much power in the data, in many positive ways, right? Which is, that's what drives us to lean into animation or to lean into original series, lean into first-time creators, original concepts, things like that, because the data supports that. So that was probably the biggest thing for me, is moving away from this system of intuition, which also, by the way, oftentimes favors those at the top, meaning my intuition tells me this very seasoned writer will be able to perform again, which is sort of older thinking. And then being at a tech company, they're much more open to leaning into risk where it feels like the right choice based on the data that we have available to us.
We are never going to leave our house ever again.
No.
Because of the Netflix. Is like, why would I ever leave my house to go someplace? I'm just gonna sit right here, have my cookies and cream ice cream, and watch. I love that. I love the transition. Well, okay. Naturally, a lot of these questions are the same, so I'm just gonna ask it, but in a way of like, okay, how would somebody pitch to Netflix?
How do you mechanically get in the door?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say honestly, for us, it's always going to have to come through a pre-existing relationship, which is what I'm sure you guys hear all the time.
Yeah.
It has to come through an agent, a manager, a lawyer, or producer, or production company that we already have a relationship with. And that's obviously to protect us. If you come in and you pitch me a singing dog movie, and then we make one, which we inevitably will, you could sue us based on that. But Also, it's to protect you, meaning, I could inadvertently absorb some idea totally subconsciously, and those things happen. So unfortunately, which I know is challenging for folks who are unrepped and just trying to break in, but we do also, we do end up buying a lot of things from festivals, pitch days, things like that. So I always encourage folks to show up and come out at those things as much as they can, because we do go to those because they're through sanctioned organizations that we trust.
Yeah, makes sense. Has there ever been a live action project that went through another division and they were like, actually, this would be better for animation? Or is it just completely different beasts in terms of just from the script point of view?
Yeah, we actually have done that with a couple of things, and both ways, where we'll buy something, we develop it, and then we're like, this actually feels more like it just naturally wants to be live action, or vice versa, where something's been developed as live action for a long time, and for whatever reason they can't crack it, and it's like, well, because this really should just be animated.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of fluidity there.
And how much of the production process are you involved with? Decisions like composer, editor?
Yeah, definitely very involved in positions like composer, like editor, production designer, head of story, cast. Obviously, voiceover casting is huge for us. And we're also really lucky at Netflix because at most studios sort of break up by development and then production or current. And we really stay with projects the whole life cycle. So we buy it and then we're there on the day that it launches, and we're sort of through the whole way. We have production executives who support in terms of, they're the real experts on budgeting, scheduling, all of that stuff, but we really stay through the entire life of the project creatively.
How many hours a night do you sleep? This is insanity.
Not at all.
Not at all. It's just Netflix gives you a pill. You're like, you're up for 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. But you do need, like, it is just knowing you the little I do, like, you are so passionate about animation and being kind of pulled in so many different directions. Like you do need that passion to keep going. Otherwise the light will burn out so fast. And I think the same thing for writers with their stories. They have to go in so passionate about it because that's going to help keep you excited as well.
Yeah, and for them too, it's like, gosh, like I've talked with writers who are like, well, I gotta go do another couple of weeks on this thing that I hate, and it's like not a good place to be in, and you're obviously not going to do your best work.
And this is from Tanya. How often do you work with book publishers?
We work a lot with book publishers. You know this, Joey, we don't lean a ton on IP, but we do find that there are a lot of great just ideas in the book space. So we have book scouts that we work with who sort of foster a lot of those relationships for us. And we're always reading and looking for what that next great idea might be coming from a book.
Even though you guys aren't so into the IP world, is there any kind of, I keep hearing podcasts are becoming so popular, maybe short stories, interactive programming. Is there something that you see like in the horizon, you're like, oh, this is a format to look out for?
What a great question. I think, well, for animation, I think it's slightly different because so few of those things really translate. Like I love some of the fiction and nonfiction podcasts, and they're excellent for live action adaptation and things like that. But really where we find some amazing ideas and artists is on Instagram. There are some incredible artists who are telling micro stories on like 6 squares on Instagram, or even on an Insta story or whatever. So certainly where we're looking for like fresh or new talent or new ways to tell stories, we're mostly on Instagram.
I'm so old. I don't even know what 6 squares mean. I'm like 6squares.com after this. Wow. Yeah. I feel like Instagram, Twitter, there's so many things. TikTok is becoming huge. Do you feel like writers, okay, to this point then, again, I'm going on a tangent. Do you feel like writers should be active on social media? Like, do you think that's almost a necessity at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think artists more so, animation artists for sure, because that's how you show your work. But I don't know, I think if it's not right for you, then it's not right for you. And I feel like I see some folks on social that I'm like, God, this is so not your nature. Like, please stop doing this to yourself and to everybody else. Like, you don't need to do it. Just if you have great samples, that's ultimately what it's going to be about.
Cool. Okay, this is from Faye. I think we asked this the last panel too, but in animation, is the original writer always or mostly always involved throughout the whole project?
It depends.
Casey,
It
yeah.
depends. Yeah. If it's a really, which most of ours are, if it's a really personal story, we'll have that person on through the entire life of the project. Even if we bring on another writer, like, let's say we're going to bring in somebody to do like a comedy punch up or something like that, we'll usually work with the original writer to say, like, what kind of person are you interested in, or how do you feel about this? How would you feel about working with this person? But also, you are very liberated to sort of go off and do other things, and you don't need to really be that connected on the ground every day. And again, it just sort of depends on the story and the writer.
It's kind of interesting. Like, I mean, there is such an openness with your company that once you get in and once you make a relationship, it's just like, uh, in contrast to a lot of other studios, it's not only so closed door to get in, but even then it's like you kind of flounder a little bit. But for you all, it's so exciting that there is such an openness
Yeah.
creatively. I think that's really exciting. Do you think Netflix will be, and obviously speak to anything that you can or cannot, but do you think Netflix will be screening movies at their own theaters soon?
I cannot comment on that, but I will say that I mean, I personally am not going to be going to the movies anytime soon.
Yeah.
So potentially, again, I'm not part of these conversations, but potentially part of those conversations would have been, bucked by this whole new world where we'll
Yeah.
see how many theaters even survive. I'm a person who loves to go to the movies, so it's painful for me, but who knows is my honest answer.
Not to be morbid, but ever
Yeah.
since like there's been so much accidents and shootings at movies. Like whenever I'm watching a movie, I'm only watching the exit. I'm like, okay, if something happens, how am I going to get out of here? Like it's just so many variables, and I think this COVID is really just kind of pushed it over the edge. As people like, I don't have to go to the movies. I can enjoy it from the comfort of my own bed, which I've been doing for the past 3 days. Okay, so let's see another question. Yeah, I mean, there's some questions that seem kind of redundant. How does the process look for buying a pitch?
For us, it's pretty straightforward, which is you come in, you pitch. It's probably me or one of my colleagues. There's usually only a couple of us in the room. Um, if we like it, it's very simply that we'll take it back to the rest of our team. We'll say, we heard this thing, we like it, we're going to buy it. Anybody have major hesitations for whatever reason? They say yes, they say no, fine. We move forward and we buy it. I don't know. It's very, very simple. Other studios have, I think, more rigorous steps to go through to buy something, but ours is very much just like, does it feel fresh? Does it feel different? Does the executive feel passionately about it? Then we buy it.
And so I feel like one kind of non-starter is that if there's a project already
Yes.
on air or being air is similar, it's like instant no. It's like
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah,
No, sorry.
It totally, it's even, I'll ask before people even come in or even have a conversation about their project, I'll ask, like, can you just tell me the log line? Because it again goes to that, like, well, I actually don't want you to come in and pitch me your whole take on something that we're doing that's like 5 degrees different from what we're already developing or producing. Now I'm in this weird situation where you've told me all your ideas. I actually don't want to hear them. So yeah, you're totally right. Like if somebody is coming in with something that we already have or it's like way too similar, we'll politely say, we can't hear it.
Yeah, makes sense. What is your favorite animation of the past 5 years and why?
I mean, I think the one that comes to mind for me always right away is Inside Out.
Yeah.
I thought it was so brave and so special and so memorable. But I also really, really loved. Well, it's not fair because I'm going to say a few things. Inside Out, Coco,
Uh-huh.
which I thought just from an animation perspective was so incredible, and Spider-Verse.
Ooh, why Spider-Verse?
I think Spider-Verse just did something so bold with the look of their film that it was just, and also I'm a person who has like incredible superhero fatigue. Like I do not care. Like I'm not here for the Avengers. I'm like not
No.
interested at all.
Yeah.
But they took a story that's been told over and over and over again, and they made it feel really special and intimate. I think the way that they created that character was so, like, that scene where he's like singing along and he gets the words wrong in act one. Like I was like, holy shit, I love this thing already, apart from all the artistry of how they actually produced it, because the main character felt so relatable, even to reinvent a story that we all already know.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ziad asks, how much does a writer need to know about animation to get a job in the animation world?
Totally fair question. The answer is like truly nothing. We work mostly with writers from live action. We'll educate them on the process. We even work with filmmakers who are not from animation, but that's more challenging. But when it comes to writers, it's like good stories, good story, and the medium we can take care of that on our side. We just really need you to be the expert in character and story.
Cool. We have time for two more questions. This from Christopher. What percentage of your day do you spend hearing pitches, and how many pitches do you hear in a day?
It totally depends on the day. Some days it can be like, I can hear like 4 pitches a day. That's a lot. But typically I probably hear somewhere between like 3 to 5 a week.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
maybe 1 a day, 2 a day, depending. And then also obviously spending a ton of time reading that stuff that's submitted.
Yeah. I think now that I remember, I feel like that's what we talked about last time, is that your day, there is no like routine. Like every day is so different.
Yes, very, very different. Sometimes it's hearing it just depends on the week too. It's like maybe we have a ton of stuff coming in, we're hearing tons of pitches, but then other times it's like, man, we gotta find a new writer or a new producer or something on this project. So we'll spend 3 full days reading samples or, doing interviews with producers. So it wildly varies. Other times we're really in the trenches looking at character design or looking at storyboards on a particular production that just needs that attention that week. Sometimes we're in screening. So it just totally depends.
Yeah. Has your day-to-day changed since this all happened?
It has. It has. I would say I'm definitely more focused on making sure our current shows are okay. Getting folks like ramped up with all the tech they need to work from home, and that our writers feel like they're well connected with us, things like that. I think that my focus has shifted a little bit more towards servicing that. And I would say I'm taking probably slightly fewer generals and things like that, just in order to make sure the train is running properly.
Makes no sense.
We are still hearing pitches for sure, and like we just bought something last week, so that's definitely still happening.
What is your dog's name?
Did she make an appearance? Daisy.
Daisy. I think she's like, somebody walked by her. There was a brown head over. He's being very nice. I think he was crawling behind. And the very last question: how many pages should there be in a pitch deck?
Ooh, I know that this seems to be my answer in everything, which is like whatever you need to tell your story properly, but that's really the reality, is like whatever you need. But I don't know, somewhere between, if it's really just a pitch doc, I would say like 2 to 5 pages.
Okay. And should it have like artistry in it as well, or just, do you like graphics? No.
Yeah, it can be, I think there are a lot of writers who will find an artist to work with when they're developing their story, in which case I say, yes, definitely show art if you have art. But if not, it just, story and character.
Cool.
Yeah.
Katie, it's so, I've only met you twice, but it's so exciting just to see everything that's going on with you. It's like taking over the world. And now more than ever in this field is so awesome. But what's awesome about it too is that I deal with hundreds of execs, and when I always ask them, do you like your job? And like 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, I hate my job. But it's like, you genuinely love your job, and it shows.
I do. I really do. But thank you, Joey. I think what you're doing for all the writers who are trying to, tell their stories is so special and meaningful and important. So thank you for all that you do, and you're always just such a joy to see and talk to. So I'm just honored to be here. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God, no, you're amazing. And the last thing is, pick a number between 1 and 100, and there's 100 people on now, and then that person is going to win a prize.
Ooh, okay, gosh, okay, 57.
57. Okay, how do I do this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Should I pick like 3?
30, 40. Okay, 50. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Katharina Starks. You won 10 1,000. No, I'm just kidding. Could you imagine? That would be amazing. Catherine, email me. You're going to win a free month into one of our programs. So email me at joey@roadmapwriters.com, Katharina Starks, and you'll get it. You're like, should I just pick 3? I was hoping you'd pick like 1. I'm like, perfect. Yeah, awesome. So
Awesome.
cool. Well, Katie, thank you so much. This is awesome. And everybody just stay on for a beat. And then have a great day with Daisy and your boyfriend.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Joey. I'll see you
Cool.
soon.
Bye. See ya. Awesome. I'm gonna stop the recording. This has nothing to do with anything.